Hello and welcome in. It's the PHNX Draft Podcast brought to you by PHNX Cardinals. I'm Johnny Venerable. He is Bo Brack. Bo, second show. Here we go as the Arizona Cardinals are now picking number 2 in the current standings for the 2024 NFL Draft. A lot to get into, what that could factor into in terms of top picks, where the other pick currently stands because the effing Houston Texans refuse to lose games. Yeah. But first, welcome to the program, my dear friend.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. All this pain and suffering could pay off. We got a big old draft show on tap for you. I mean, if we look at it, what ESPN's FPI, they had it out there, the Cardinals right now, they're in line for 2.9. That's their average draft position. So right there, jockeying between 2 and 3, and right there in position for some really rock solid prospects. Now, if things go worse, right? I mean, it depends on when your franchise caliber quarterback comes back to play and how many more games of Joshua Dobbs we have to endure, and this offense continues to struggle, could put you in a primo position at the end of the year to be drafting the top prospect in this draft. And as we start to kind of look at that, it hasn't changed, right? I mean, Caleb Williams, despite USC dropping, its last 2 games and Cliff Kingsbury being elevated on the coaching staff to an assistant coach, and Lincoln Riley is missing in action because is he just not dealing with losing well? I don't know. But Caleb Williams, obviously some red flags have popped up with him and how he's approached things, but Caleb Williams remains the top pick in this draft.
Well, and let's get into it. Here is Caleb Williams, the highly touted, quote, generational prospect out of the University of Southern California. Again, by many accounts on the record saying he would have gone first in last year's draft over Bryce Young. And I think we can nitpick these guys to a fault. Here's what I'll say about Caleb Williams. The things that I'm hearing about Caleb Williams this year are the same things I heard as a deterrent to Kyler Murray under Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah. Playing outside the script, a little bit of hero ball. And so I don't necessarily worry about Caleb Williams beyond this year because I'm going to tell you right now, I think Cliff Kingsbury has coached him into some bad habits, into some turnover-worthy habits, and they're not playing sound offensive fundamental football. I think if he gets into the structure of an offense, assuming that the Bears get their act together and get an offensive head coach, Jim Harbaugh, the Cardinals were to take him with Drew Petzing, I think all of this would be alleviated. To me, my biggest concerns with Caleb Williams are not on the field, it's off the field. Right. The arrogance, all the stuff with his dad, that's real stuff. I don't want to hear people say, no, that's just outside noise. Well, they're bringing that attention onto themselves. He's painting his fingernails, got FU to all these opposing teams, and then he goes out and they get their ass kicked by Notre Dame and Utah back-to-back weeks, talking about he wants stock in an NFL franchise. It's just the Cardinals have, just like we talked about last year for different reasons, Jalen Carter, right? Outside noise. The Cardinals, in the midst of the rebuild, they can't welcome any of that, man. It's got to be meat and potatoes with this franchise. Everything on the field, minimal noise, Bo Brack off the field.
Yeah, I think the prospect on the field, a lot of people thought that he was bulletproof, right? And that hasn't proven to be true. What we've seen the performances, especially against Notre Dame with the 3 interceptions and then the loss to Utah, he looked mortal. He absolutely did. When people are saying and throwing around the word generational, I think that they're being a little too cavalier with it when you're talking about, can't miss prospect, because we very well know throughout the NFL history and the NFL draft history that guys can bust at the very top of the draft. And what you think coming from the college level doesn't translate to the NFL level. Let's talk about Caleb Williams. Is he immature off the field? I think we're seeing signs of that. Are we seeing red flags? Are we seeing a guy that doesn't fit what the philosophy of this new regime for the Arizona Cardinals is? A unified front, an egoless organization. Are we seeing that on display in Southern California? I don't think so. But when you look at the prospect overall, when you look at the arm talent, when you look at the playmaking ability, a little bit more size than the quarterback that you have in place right now, it's going to be tough to say no at the end of the day. It's going to be arguably the most difficult decision that Monty Ossenfort would have to make if he's staring down a prospect the caliber of Caleb Williams, because he's that talented.
I'm glad, I agree, but I'm glad you brought up his size. He is bigger than Kyler Murray, but he's about on par with a Bryce Young though, or a little bit taller than that maybe, but he is not 6'2", 6'3", chiseled out of granite like some of these guys. He's certainly not as big as Lamar or even a Joe Burrow, right? And so I think the notion that he's just going to walk in here and be able to operate at a high level because he's this premier gifted athlete, I think that's a little naive. I could definitely see him, depending on where he goes, Chicago, maybe Arizona, maybe somewhere else, having struggles his first year. I don't think he's immune to that, right? Because I don't know if he's a special quarterback prospect. I don't know if he's like a special athlete. Like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen were special athletes at the position that grew as passers, where Caleb really, turns you on as a quarterback is you make all the throws and he can do pressure in his face and he runs to throw. He doesn't run out of necessity.
Right. He's very Mahomes-like as far as that. Like he's not a guy that's going to be.
Look, yes.
I know that's not.
To try to play his game for sure.
It's an unfair comparison, but as far as his game speaks with the arm talent and the throws he makes and utilizes athleticism to set up those throws, not, hey, I'm going to go rip off 20 plus yards with my legs and make defenders miss here and there. So here's the one thing, and I didn't think we were going to get this discussion, but this is the conversation we've had about Caleb Williams here, and we're having this on our second PHNX Cardinals draft show. I feel very down on Caleb Williams. Like if you were pressured right now for the Cardinals to pivot their organization on Caleb Williams, where do you feel as far as that decision?
I think a lot of it has to play out this season and into the offseason, right? Like I don't know how much more Caleb Williams can prove as a football player on the field. Like I'm not buying into the notion he's regressed. I think, again, for me, everything comes into what's happening off the field. And most importantly, Bo, does he buy into the Cardinals and being a Cardinal franchise quarterback, a Cardinal legend? Like, say what you want about Kyler Murray. He inherited a GM that had an extreme DUI ticket that had to spend a night or two in jail. He inherited a losing college head coach and an owner that's had his ups and downs, for the lack of a better term. And so he never complained about coming to Arizona. He welcomed the challenge, right? And so is Caleb Williams going to welcome that challenge? Because for me, it's like he has turned off the supporters. Let's say it was 50-50 Kyler, Caleb supporters. I think he's lost at least 10 to 20% of that group here locally in the Valley. I think he's lost supporters in other markets too. Like, and that kind of translates to the next guy, right? With Drake Maye. Like I've been told, we hear stuff kind of in the weeds, like Drake Maye, I don't think he's going to go one, but he's closed the gap to some degree with his play and with his ability to kind of lead on and off the field, lead by example. People just like what he has going on. Now it's the ACC, and I know Pac-12 is not great defensively, but ACC, playing with guys who may or may not be in the NFL. But I mean, Drake Maye, and you see him here, I mean, he's 6'4". He's all 6'4", whereas Caleb's like 6 foot, maybe and a half, maybe 6'1". The pro comp is Justin Herbert. While I think that's unfair, I don't think it's like I don't have to take too far to get there, right? Like you put out Patrick Mahomes to Caleb Williams, and like the size difference is a problem for me. Like he could be Justin Herbert if everything goes right in the NFL. He's big, he's mobile, he's got a huge arm. Now, his completion percentage is a little bit concerning. He's about 65. I would love, if I'm taking a top quarterback, I need you to be, Kyler Murray's around 70% in the NFL. So Caleb Williams, can you improve on that? He's got a good stable of running backs and receivers, but look at him on the move here. Throwing on the move, putting it on a dot. The receiver doesn't have to slow down. I am not the biggest fan of this young man. Because I think Kyler Murray at the end of the day can get you better results as an NFL quarterback. Here's what I will say.
Is it Tom Tupa?
If the Cardinals are picking in the top 3 and Drake Maye is available, they will do their homework on Drake Maye. It's as simple as that. Nobody can sit here and say that, assuming that the season plays out, let's just call it poorly. Let's say Kyler comes back and they still have a top 3 pick. We're going to see Monty Ossenford at Chapel Hill working this guy out. So I'm making sure everybody is prepared for that. Because again, like look at the mobility, look at the arm talent. He's thrown across his body, hits the guy in stride. Like I'm not an advocate over Drake Maye over Kyler Murray, but I think that we have to be realists here. And the reality is, top 3 pick, you're working out all these guys. You're having the conversations like Brian Baldinger told us on our show earlier this week, Bo. Like if they feel like he's a damn good top 2 to 3 prospect, doesn't matter what you have in house, you're going to talk to him.
Every level. As far as that you need to make every throw you need to make as an NFL quarterback, he's got that, right? Yeah. And you mentioned the size 6'4", 225, built in a lab. That's what you're looking from the quarterback position. And if Monty Ossenfort was on a dating app and he's putting, his requirements, his likes and dislikes, like he's matching with Drake Maye. I mean, Drake Maye is, Clayton Tune on steroids. If he liked Clayton Tune in the 5th round, sure shit going to like Drake Maye, potentially 2nd overall. There's a match there.
Didn't take DTR, took Clayton Tune. What did that tell us, Bo?
Right. And you just kind of look at the quarterbacks in his past and Monty Ossenfort's past and what the type of signal caller he likes. I think Drake Maye checks all those boxes. He's got the arm talent that you like that we talked about with Caleb Williams. He's got, obviously less mobility, but enough mobility. And it just is a playmaker out there and absolutely in the conversation for the Arizona Cardinals as we continue our Fab Five here on our draft show. Next on this, you start to get out of the quarterback range, right? Because I think if you play yourself out of the top 2 picks, you're playing yourself out of the Caleb Williams, Drake Maye conversation. And then you start to look at, okay, how do we build around Kyler Murray? How do we move this thing forward? How do we just continue to add talent to this roster? You do it through premium positions. And, we talked about Joel last week. And there are people in the chat, they're like, you know what? Joel Out's nice. But have you seen Olu Fashanu from Penn State? He's the real tackle 1 in this class. And if you watch him, I know they didn't play great against Ohio State, but Fashanu did. 6'6", 313, big prospect coming out of the Big Ten. That's where you like to get your pass protectors out there. The size you want, you got the agility you want, you got the strength in the lower head half, and then you got the range that you want. And obviously, he's a guy like Paris Johnson Jr. that's got a high motor, and he's a good prospect off the field. What do you not like about 74 here for the Nittany Lions, Johnny? I mean, this is somebody right there with Joe Alt that you're like, absolutely, let's go back-to-back drafts by taking a tackle in the 1st round in the top 10.
Yeah, it's like, do you like, it's kind of what high-end champagne do you like? $100 bottle of this, $100 bottle of that. You like caviar, right? You like lobster. Like it's all elite, right? You're all eating good with everything here. He is like, I like Joel because I think he's the complete package and the physicality stands out. Not that this young man's not physical, but you look up some of his traits. Like he actually does have a lot of similar comps, and he's probably a better prospect to somebody like Paris Johnson Jr. Elite pass protector. We saw it in those clips. He can get a little stagnant in the run game, and I think Paris will get that cleaned up this offseason as he builds up muscle and does a true traditional offseason with strength and conditioning with the Arizona Cardinals. But this young man, to me, can come in and play left tackle just like Paris could. Now, over there on the right side now, year 1. I mean, you would have 2 supremely gifted elite level pass protectors. Whereas like Joe Alt, if you told me he struggled a little bit pass protection in his first year, he played right tackle. We kicked Paris Johnson Jr. over to left tackle. And then Joe Alt's like one of the best run blocking right tackles in the NFL. Like that wouldn't surprise me either. It really is just going to come down to their personal preference, because I think firmly both these guys are top 5 to 7 prospects. I think they are unquestionable the top 2 tackles. I think they're going to have elite, historic level combine performances. And to me, it's like, watch how Joe Alt and Notre Dame win football games. They run people over. They destroy people at the line of scrimmage. Like, do you really say that about Penn State, or it's just they're fine? They're steady offensively, right? I think a lot of people think their defensive personnel is better. So I think you get much more substance with Alt. But that does not mean this kid out of Penn State cannot come in and be an elite left tackle. Of course he can. And so I trust people who say that, just like I trust people who say that Keon Coleman is 1B to Marvin Harrison Jr.'s 1A. Keon Coleman, of course, the wide receiver 1 for the Florida State Seminoles. We talk about a type, right? Drake Maye could be a type for Monty Ossenfort. Keon Coleman, a type as he catches a one-hander there for Monty Ossenfort, a receiver. 6'4", elite burst and explosiveness, elite physical traits, right? Like he'll make a catch like this. He can drop an occasional pass here or there. We have to be fair to the rest of these wideouts led by Keon Coleman. Like just because you're not Marvin Harrison Jr. does not mean you don't have a chance to be an all-pro level wide receiver. So again, the days of Andy Isabella, respectively, Rondell Moore, these undersized wide receivers, that's over for this franchise. They want to get big, more physical. I mean, could you imagine? You don't have a chance to get, let's say, Marvin Harrison Jr. You take a tackle, you take a defensive end, and then you get, with your other first rounder, a Keon Coleman to go opposite Michael Wilson. Now we're eating good in the neighborhood, Bo Brack.
Yeah, I mean, can we see that highlight again?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to take my pants back to the pants store. It's the
Oh,
pleats.
Jesus.
It's the pleats as I watch this play.
I'm gonna
My
have to find
God,
this video.
when you talk about Michael Wilson, and there's so much to like about Michael Wilson, 3rd round pick, 96th overall at Stanford, but you know, he falls in the draft. Like, you watch this play right here, Michael Wilson, like, he can make so many plays. He doesn't make this play. Like,
Right.
this is the type of playmaking that you get if you utilize a 1st round pick and you expect on a wide receiver. And like you said, 6'4", you know, about anywhere from 212 to 220 as far as big bodied guy, but as athletic as they come out of Florida State, just playmaker. I mean, we see some of the missed throws that Joshua Dobbs is making. I hope it's not Dobbs throwing the ball next year, but if it's Kyler Murray, if it's Drake Maye, if it's anybody else, like, there's a good chance that Keon Coleman's coming down with that football, and that's a weapon that you can always utilize. I don't care what offense you're running, but it helps with what Drew Petzing likes to do. And if you got another big body guy with Michael Wilson to complement him, I mean, that we're talking big NFL bodied wide receivers for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the fall of the Vikings template, right? Like, Justin Jefferson, now they add this Jordan Addison kid. I mean, that's what's winning in today's NFL. There's only one Tyreek Hill. These undersized receivers, like, they're fantastic when you hit on them, but they're the exception to the rule. The rule is you take the biggest, strongest, fastest player.
Right.
And that's what Keon Coleman represents. And again, that he's a phenomenal run blocker too. That probably doesn't surprise you.
And we see guys like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, guys that came from that LSU, you know, national championship team. But it's tough. It's good to find like productive wide receivers like a Michael Wilson. I think he'll be productive in his career and he'll be really rock solid. But guys that when the game is in the balance and you need somebody to go make a play, that's the type of playmaking that it's tough to replicate. What also is tough to replicate is a guy to get after a quarterback. In last year's draft, we saw Will Anderson come out of Alabama, and you know, our biggest knock on him, and if you can call this a knock, is he wasn't generational, right? And I don't think that this guy, his successor at Bama, is generational either. But man, is he productive? Dallas Turner coming out of the SEC. Nick Saban continues to just churn out some pass rushers. He's stepped up and he's having an even more impressive season than Will Anderson had last year. Look at him just violently just throw this guy to the ground. That's a playmaker that just couldn't get out from his grasp here. But 15 already, I think 35 pressures on the season, 8 sacks early in the college season. Look at him just get after the Texas A&M quarterback. That's what you want. And I think, you know, it's nice to see this pass rush rotation for the Arizona Cardinals, where it's come and where it's gone so far under Nick Rawlis. But if you get a playmaker, just like we talked about the wide receiver position off the edge and what it does for you and how it can game wreck offenses, that's what you're looking for. And Dallas Turner is somebody that, you know, he projects as high as 5. I think ESPN had him as high as 5, and then you've got him down there in the 20s. So he's got a pretty wide range where he might be available.
Well, and they have an MO in Alabama. It's like, we can generate pressure and we churn out one of these guys every other year, seemingly. And I think, fair or not, like, Bama has not been in the national title contention this year, so people aren't paying attention to them. And their struggles offensively, I think, have unfairly masked what they've been doing defensively. It's a very nice season, and it's led by this young man here. What I will say also is, we talk about floors and ceilings. This kid's 20 years old. So if he's racking up 7.5, 8 sacks, same with Keon Coleman, these guys are only going to get better. It's some of the knocks on the guys we were scouting last year for this team, and they were like 23, 24 years old. Then you better be an elite player or close to, if you're going in the first 2 rounds, year 1 or year 2. Whereas if you take a guy like Dallas Turner early, it's like, okay, have 7 sacks your first year. Okay, you're 21 the next year, you're 22 the year after that. You can grow into that role. The Cardinals have a lot of just kind of meat and potato players at pass rusher. They do not have a blue chip, and frankly, they don't have a blue chip front 7 player. Respectfully to all those guys, they got a bunch of C+, B- guys. Dallas Turner and some of the guys we talked about last week, Bo, those are the A's. Those are the main courses that make everybody better. Dallas Turner turns into a Pro Bowler. If Zaven Collins is still here, he gets better. BJ Ojulari, he gets better. So the Cardinals, to me, the biggest point of contention with this season outside of quarterback play is line of scrimmage play. Moving people on both sides of the ball and generating the kind of pressure you want to be able to disrupt opposing quarterbacks. They just haven't done it enough.
No, they haven't. But you've seen what they can do just with replacement level guys in having the rotation that Rollis and JG like to have, and how impactful that can be. But if you put blue chip caliber prospects, you put NFL caliber talent on that rotation, they're going to make big time plays for you, like JG's defense did in Philadelphia, racking up 70 sacks. That's the type of athlete that you need to get in place for those big gaudy numbers to really happen.
So we broke down 5 prospects today in our Fab 5. We've done 10 thus far this season. I think we both agree line of scrimmage play on either side of the ball is the priority for this team. Do you think we can get there in our newest edition of the PFF Mock Draft Simulator? Give me the hottest of hot minutes here as I share my screen. Mr. Brack, PFF, they do a fantastic job. We get Trevor Sikkema on when we are fortunate. If you go over to their NFL section, maybe I can find NFL Draft, Mock Draft Simulator. Of course, we are selecting the Arizona Cardinals. In this scenario, you can select any team you want, but we're going to, of course, go with our precious Redbirds here. We're just going to do the first round. We're going to enter this draft situation, Bo. A little bit different than the last time we did this. Options are a little bit more robust because they are at number 2. In this scenario, Caleb Williams goes first overall, Bo. So everybody's on the table. Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake Maye, of course, Fashanu out of Penn State we talked about, your boy Brock Bowers, Joe Alt. Who are you going with? I'm letting you pick 2 because I'm picking 16.
Well, here's the issue, right? You got Chicago they're back on deck, right? Because they have their own pick and they have Carolina's pick that they just utilized to take Caleb Williams. So Williams is off the board. There's the tantalizing pick there. You got to make the tough decision. You're having the conversation. You're at the pro day for Drake Maye. But I think, I hope, right, that Kyler Murray makes this team believe in him going forward and that they can take the best player in this draft. I want to take the wide receiver out of Ohio State, Marvin Harrison Jr., with the 2nd overall pick.
I agree. And here's the problem that the Cardinals would be in if they entertain the idea of trading down. If you trade down, let's say, with the Denver Broncos to 4 and they come up to take Drake Maye, well, Caleb's going 3. So You're basically at that point, you leave the top 3, you leave a premium prospect, maybe a Hall of Fame level prospect, and Marvin Harrison Jr. off the board. So I'm with you. Cardinals have a lot of picks. They don't have a lot of great players, and I think he's as close to a sure thing as you can as the Cardinals now move down to pick 16, Bo, and a lot of quality options on the table, including 2 guys that we've covered in our top 5, Kool-Aid McKinstry and Dallas Turner. And here's the deal. I do not love taking cornerbacks particularly high, especially when a front 7 is so undermanned like the Arizona Cardinals. Do I think Kool-Aid is a better prospect than Dallas Turner? I do. I think, and I said this before, if you can get the CB1 in a draft over Edge 3 or Edge 4 or DT2, I'm going to strongly consider that. So with guys like Keon Coleman gone, Jared Verse gone, Newton, our boy out of Illinois, gone, I think the logical move is let's get two players that were at the top of their positional rankings at premium positions. We're not compromising. This isn't an off-ball linebacker. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry is the way to go.
Love it. There you go. You get the wide receiver, and then you get another premium position, and you get Kool-Aid that can play on the outside. You've got Garrett Williams, I think, who's going to prove to be a great slot nickel type corner for the foreseeable future. And then you've got one spot in your defensive secondary that you really need to fill, and that's CB2, right? The corner opposite Kool-Aid, and that's going to solve a lot of problems because what we've seen, the play from Marco Wilson hasn't been there. The rotation of late round draft picks and Keitrell Clark and Sterling Thomas hasn't proven to be something you can move forward with. Get Kool-Aid and then probably go hit free agency or later in the draft as an option as far as your other outside corner. And then you got JT, you got Buddha, you got Garrett Williams, you got Kool-Aid. That's a pretty damn rock solid secondary to move forward with. I like it. You didn't consider Bo Nix there?
Considering hanging up this podcast, I was just about to say, and then you were disingenuous. The nice thing about having so many needs is that you can go best player available, assuming it's at a position that's premium. What are premium positions to Austin Ford? Offensive, defensive line, pass rusher, cornerback, QB, wide receiver. We're going to talk about all those and more in the coming weeks, Bo. Does the Cardinal pick stay stagnant? Does it move up 1 pick to number 1 overall? or does it move down with the impending return of Kyler Murray and good health? Can Houston please lose some games so that pick 16 maybe creeps just ever so slightly closer to the top 10? We're going to be breaking it down every single opportunity here on the PHNX Draft Podcast, brought to you by PHNX Cardinals. For Bo Brack, I'm Johnny Venerable. We'll see you next time.
We all silly like the mayor.